and welcome. Today is going to be the third and last in the mini-series of my guide to eccentric goblet turning, and today I'm going to cover an alternative method of holding your blank and the effect that that has on the offset that you produce. And what I'm going to be using, the taking two jaws out of the chuck, which I'll obviously show you in more detail in a minute, and this is the jig, if you like, that I've made, and all it is, it's a piece of oak that will be clamped between the two jaws. Now to that I have hot glued a sacrificial glue block. The reason that that is a tenon there is because it is an old glue block that I used. I spun it round, got it all as nice, as square as I could, and then I just turned it so when it's in the jaws it runs true, and then dished out very slightly the face, and then obviously the blank will be hot glued to that, and I'll show you that, as I say, in a second. So I hope you enjoy it. The whole idea of this series, I'll say again, is not to produce off-centre goblets, but it's to show you the methods that you can employ and go away and experiment with. So without further ado, we'll go over to the lathe and I'll show you this particular method. Okay, so what I've got here, I've got my medium gripper jaws in my chuck, and I like those because they've got a nice sort of long jaw profile. And I have kept in jaw number 1 and the opposite jaw number 3 for no particular reason, it's just easier for me. Now the oak blank has number 1 and number 3, so I get it in the right orientation, and I have the red mark, and you can see the indentation of the jaw there is clearly marked, and I merely get it into that position, and that is central axis. And we can see when this spins that the glue chuck part is spinning true. Now the idea then is to glue your turning blank to the glue block, and then when that is set up, then you merely slide to whatever degree you require this, undo it, move it, and then you'll be off center, and the profile that that will produce, and I'll show you that in a second, is it won't be on a slant like the previous stems on moving it in the off-centering it in the actual chuck. Make sure that your hot glue is as hot as you can get it. I have the center of this blank there, so I can bring up the tailstock to help center it on the chuck. This will help to get it as central as possible on the glue blank, on the glue block. And then a little bit of pressure, and then I like to go around the join. Again, the glue, I keep saying, as hot as you can get it, and then wait for that to completely set up. So I'll come back when that's done. Okay, so the glue is now hardened up, and you can always tell that really when it starts to go a little bit opaque. So that's all done now, so that's nice and solid. So, and you might just have to just true up your blank, bearing in mind this is the blank. Now we're going to imagine that the bowl is here again, and the reason I'm doing that is basically for ease of showing you. So what we'll do here is just form the stem that we would have before we started. Okay, so like before, we have the stem and the goblet bowl would be here. so we're on central axis. Now the idea of this method is that you loosen your two jaws. You have, I've got a mark on here from where I did one before, and it doesn't have to be exact with regards to where you put it for the first one, but you need to make a mark so that when you come back to that off centre it goes in the same plane, if you want it to go in the same plane. There is no hard and fast rule. You can play around, as I say, and experiment, and always check that you've got the block flush against, tight up against the back of the jaws, so that you're in a parallel to the bedways. But again, that's not critical, it will just affect how things turn out. So now we're off centre. So what will happen is, if you can actually turn as quick as you're happy with, because like when you're cutting air, it's always advantageous to go a bit quicker, because then it's not a clunkety clunkety clunk. Okay, so again, light cuts, bearing in mind you're starting cutting with air. And just cutting straight in to make your second stem. Stop and look, and I think you'll get the idea that you are getting a different profile off the tool without any dressing up, if you like. Check again. Very shortly, going to be cutting in to the actual stem. Now the reason I've done this is to show you that I've only moved that about 3 mil. Okay, now obviously I'm not going to be able to turn this down to that width, because I'm going to cut into the stem. So what you need to do is, if you put it back onto where it is central, you only need to move it ever so slightly. So I've moved it there, hardly anything at all. A little bit more. And there, we're just about a little bit more. Ship out there, but don't worry about that. We've virtually got the same, and you're on the same plane. It's square, there's no slanting, because you will see, if I go back to the other one, when it's in the chuck, there is a slight offset of each stem. When it's offset, it's at an angle, whereas this is basically a perpendicular offset. So now we go back to the central axis. Again, bearing in mind, we've hardly moved it. So go back to the central axis. Just check. Yep. Tighten up. And now we will do the next offset. And I think you can see the idea. As I said before, we're not after perfect finish, we're just after the idea of what you get. Well, I hope you found that mini-series of some interest, and it gives you a little bit of inspiration to go off and experiment and try yourself, because there are no limitations. To recap, on the first video we did what I call my basic sort of offset when it's in the 4 jaws, and you tilt it like so. Somebody asked me the question about the tenon. That's why I like using the medium gripper jaws, but you're not restricted to using that type of jaw, because it allows me to have a good sized tenon that I can offset quite a bit, and it still gives quite a bit of grip. And what you get there with this style of knuckle is that those two are the central stems, that the offset stem is going to be at a slight angle to the perpendicular, because you are literally just offsetting it like so. And similarly with that style, where you have just staggered stem, if you look, that's your central, that's your central. These two are going to be again off the perpendicular. The other method, where you are literally just sliding the blank off the central, you will get a, although it shows a bit of a taper there, that's my bad turning, that's nothing to do with the theory. The central stem and your offset stem will be all perpendicular to one another, and it'll just be staggered, which gives you a good effect. You can put sweeps on there if you wish. I mean, as I say, it is completely up to you. All I'm trying to do is to give you some ideas to get you started. Well, thanks very much indeed for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you very soon. Cheers now.